Greetings, my scattered sisters and brothers in the Lord. I trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you find yourself scattered today, and that you know that His presence with you is more than enough for whatever you might face today. We continue our journey in 1 Peter, still in chapter 1. We're going to start at verse 17, which we looked at the other day, but our focus is verses 18 and 19. So 1 Peter 17, since you call on a Father who judges each person's work impartially, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. For you know that it was not with perishable things, such as silver or gold, that you were redeemed from your empty way of life, handed down to you from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. Now there's a key line in there I want us to focus on today, that we were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to us from our ancestors. Now, I don't know everything that Peter has in mind as he writes that empty way of life, that vain way of life handed down to us from our ancestors. But I'm guessing that there's probably 3 or 4 ways he might be thinking about it. So one would be in terms of kind of empty religious rituals. I think especially of Peter himself growing up in first century Judaism and all of the rituals that he saw and how empty they must have seemed. Whether it was meticulously keeping the Sabbath, whether it was all of the ritual washings, but that empty way of life handed down from their ancestors. And maybe that fits with us as well. Some of us have grown up in pretty religious settings, and yet so much of the religious rituals just kind of empty and pointless and not really much life in them. And so maybe that's what Peter has in mind, that we've been set free, we've been ransomed from that. Could be that Peter is thinking about an empty way of life that would consist of always chasing after the next best thing, always chasing after some goal, and then maybe you achieve it and there's a momentary joy there, and then you discover that what you achieved is actually rather empty, that it's rather vain, that it's rather futile, that there's not much purpose or real joy in it. And so constantly chasing for the next thing, and then whenever you get it, discovering, wow, that really didn't deliver. That really wasn't very joyful. That really didn't give meaning to my life or substance to my life. And so maybe that's what Peter has in mind in terms of being set free, being ransomed from this empty way of life of chasing after things that has been handed down to us. I think about a third way that maybe it's understood. The empty way of life in terms of just the routines of life, just kind of going through the motions, that you get up, you get breakfast, you go to work, you come back, you get dinner, you go to bed, and you just keep on going through the motions. And the life is just kind of going through the motion day in, day out. And maybe what Peter has in mind is that just gets so empty and seems so pointless and so meaningless. And we've been ransomed from that. We've been set free from that life has meaning and purpose, that it's not just going through the motions. And then maybe a fourth thing that Peter would especially have in mind, empty way of life handed down to us, life under sin. That just living in bondage of sin, so that we end up doing wrong, we end up living self-centered, we end up hurting people, and it just seems so pointless, so vain, that we just keep living self-centered. And it seems like whatever we end up doing, we're turned in on ourselves, and we really don't know how to give ourselves to others, and especially give ourselves to God. That we're almost kind of trapped in self-centeredness, stuck on ourselves. Well, Peter says, we've been ransomed from that. And the idea of a ransom is that you've been set free and you can't set yourself free. So ransom or redeemed, when somebody is in a hostage situation, a ransom is paid, and so they are redeemed, set free. And again, the point is you can't pay it yourself. And Peter's saying, we've been redeemed. We've been ransomed from this futile way of life that we couldn't set ourselves free from because of what Christ has done. We have been set free through the blood of Christ. His blood covers our sin. His blood sets us free. that Christ gave himself. God gave his Son, and Christ gave himself in that giving so that we could be set free from an empty way of life, and we could live with purpose, we could live with joy, we can live with hope. We've been given new birth into a living hope and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade, that's kept in heaven for us. And so we have this purpose. We're not trapped in emptiness. Think about the teaching of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Praise God that we're numbered among that many that he gave himself for, so we can be set free wherever we find ourselves, no matter where we're scattered, set free from living an empty life, a pointless life, a life turned in on itself, to living a life of purpose and joy unto God and loving one another. Well, God bless, have a great day, and live in the freedom of your redemption, a freedom to love God and a freedom to love others. God bless.